Good evening, everyone. Tonight is October 12th, 2022. It's 6:40 p.m., not 6:30. And we'll call to order the City of Columbus Council meeting for this evening. Our first order of business is a Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us if you care to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On to letter B. Would someone make a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda?
This is Sue. I move to approve the consent agenda, items 4 through 7.
Is there a second?
It's Rob, I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion or questions? I'll call for a roll call vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak at the public open forum? Hearing none, we'll move on to number 9.
We got someone.
Come up to the mic, please, and give us your name and address for the records. And pull the mic real close so we can hear you good.
Leo Tetrault, 16303 Kettle River Boulevard. And I've been out of the loop, but there's just one simple question that I have in regards to the moratorium on Highway 8, and I want to hear the city's reason why, and I'll rest with that question.
Would that be Lake Drive? Highway 23?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people call it Highway 8, or, I'm sorry,
No problem.
23, or Lake Drive, yeah. And that's my concern today.
All right. You can stay up at the mic if you'd like. I think the reason we took the study was to help determine what type of businesses we would like along Lake Drive for now and the next 25 years. Because things are really changing and things are really building, and people are moving out from the inner ring or second ring suburbs, and we want to make sure that it's all compatible with what the residents would like their city to look like. So we've started, I don't know, 2 months ago, and the staff is doing all kinds of research and all kinds of information, and we hope to be done before Christmas time so that things can keep moving forward. Anybody else have anything you'd like to add?
This is Janet. I'll add one more thing. When we worked on the revisions to the comp plan that the Met Council had asked us to do for the Freeway District, we discussed a lot of topics that overlapped with topics along Lake Drive. And so back in April of, I think it was 2020, we actually talked about how to define contractor shops, because that terminology is really outdated and it's very broad, and it's very confusing to the people who are coming into the city with ideas for establishing a business. And so we actually took a stab at that time during those workshops at how we would define it in the Freeway District, and we redefined it with the intent that we would likely use the same definition in Lake Drive. There were other issues related to Lake Drive, and because you can't, it takes a while to do those changes to the ordinances, the most reasonable approach was to put the moratorium in place so that businesses didn't get caught in the middle of us trying to revise and refine our ordinances. So during the moratorium, no new applications could be submitted, and that gave us the sort of latitude and the freedom to think carefully about what the definition should be and what the businesses permitted should be. And we recognize that that's a thriving part of our community, so we actually prioritized that moratorium. There were 3 actually declared. We prioritized that as our top priority and pledged to get it done before the end of the year so that we didn't hold up things any longer than we absolutely needed to. So just some additional information.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to gather information because it could be controversial, and there's a lot of business that I've done with. I've grew up with some of the business owners there, and I need to see what and the vision and what our city is looking for in that area, and it's just like I say, it's been a hard pressed and controversial and hard for me because so many of those are friends up there. And that's why I'm going to do my due diligence as a citizen, because I grew up here, and we got record going back, my family going back to 1856. I got records of that. So there's a long bit of history that that concerns me, and I hope to pass on the house to my family too. So.
Well, the important thing to remember, Leo, is that this doesn't affect the businesses that are established and who are there. What it affects is whatever the results will affect people who are coming in the future.
Sure.
So everybody who's up and down Lake Drive, they can do what they do till they die of old age. But when people are applying to the city for new things coming in,
Sure.
that's what we're hoping to get a handle on.
Yeah, and that's where I have to gather my information, because it's I want the best for people that I've like I say, grew up with, and maybe have that as their nest egg. I mean, it's and for resale as well. So.
And this doesn't affect them. This is for the people coming in.
Yep.
What do we want to see
Sure.
driving up and down Lake Drive for the next 50 years?
Yep.
So that's why we're taking the study. There's no conclusions have been made. We're still gathering information, and again, we want to do what's best for everybody too. We all live here. Everybody lives here.
Well, of course, we
So not as long as you have, but
better.
almost. So
All right.
what else would be? Anything?
I have no other questions at this time.
Well, thank you. Anybody else?
I guess this is Rob. Just on that subject, I want it to be known that those who weren't here for either the council meetings that I did not vote for that moratorium and was in favor of leaving that alone down there, not breaking it up into an east and west corridor that's, going to affect land sale for certain owners, certain developers that already moved in there. So I just wanted to share that piece.
All right, let's move on. Planning Commission report. Bob Behrens is here.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, City staff. My name is Bob Behrens with the Planning Commission. I would like to provide the City Council with an update on the most recent activities related to the last Planning Commission meeting dated 10/5/2022. Other than the normal administrative duties, at the last meeting, the Planning Commission specifically reviewed the following. First of all, we looked at and had a public discussion related to residential zone business moratorium study. This is a continuing study that we have discussed for the last several months. And specifically at this meeting, we talked about prohibited business types. Assistant City Administrator Jessica Hughes led that discussion with us, and we reviewed a list of 10 prohibited business types that we felt didn't fit into the vision of the city going forward. And so we looked at vehicle sales and maintenance, excavating businesses, welding and machine shops, tow truck businesses, ammunition manufacturing, staging areas or dispatch centers, retail sales without appointment, trash or junk haulers, businesses involving explosives, and wedding venues and event centers. As you can imagine, we had a pretty lengthy discussion around all of those types of businesses, and essentially in the end, we agreed with the list that was put together of those 10 prohibited business types. And at that point then, we took the next step and we reviewed the final review of the ordinance itself and the recommended changes around all of that through our discussions over the last several months. And so from that, then we had Jessica give us an overview of all those changes to the residential zone business ordinances during the previous committee meetings. And the commissioners were asked at that point to consider making a motion to approve the changes to the ordinance. At this point, the commissioners did make a motion to recommend forwarding the draft residential zone business ordinance and changes to the city council for consideration. You have a list of those changes and that draft ordinance in front of you tonight. So we ask for that consideration from you tonight. Next, the commissioners discussed the commercial industrial district moratorium study. At this time, the public discussion was held to consider updating the city ordinances regarding commercial design standards related to essentially Lake Drive Commercial Industrial District. Specifically, we were looking at performance standards, and City Attorney Rogers recapped that there was currently a moratorium on uses in the commercial industrial district, and the results of the previous meeting on the ordinances were updated from Attorney Rogers at that time. She reemphasized the recommendation to create a west side and east side and the changes accordingly related to those different districts on the east and west side of Lake Drive. And the main changes that we had tried to address were really relative to the west side. And the purpose of that was to encourage low-intensity industrial, commercial, restaurant, retail uses that would be compatible with surrounding neighborhoods on the west side. That was the whole purpose of the moratorium. That was the whole purpose of our discussion for the previous 2 months worth of meetings that we came up with. So with all of that, we went through a series of discussions. We went through list by list of different things that applied and didn't apply to the discussion around east side, west side, commercial industrial districts. And the next thing we talked about then was the commission considered setbacks and whether to have the flexibility to change those setbacks related to the west side in particular, because we knew that those future businesses might be impacted by some of the changes in the ordinances. And so we wanted to have some tools, some flexibility to address those types of changes in the future. And so we talked about that as well. and it was received pretty favorably by the commissioners, and I think we agreed with the recommendation that there could be some accommodation related to setbacks in the future. So with all of this, we are coming to the ends of our discussions related to the commercial industrial moratorium that's in place along Lake Drive. And I think that we've made some great headway. We've made some good recommendations that are now in front of you as a city council to consider. And at this point, I'll take any questions, if there are any, related to either the residential zone business moratorium and or the east-west business moratorium on Lake Drive.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm going to give you just a brief update in conjunction with Commissioner Barron's report. So for a little update, looking at our next meeting, you do not have your residential zone business study and or ordinances before you. It was just too much to compile all together and get in your agenda packet quick enough for you to review it all. So we've come up with a different format. So at the next planning commission meeting, it's a joint meeting. It starts at 6 o'clock, and there's going to be two presentations. The first one is going to be the commercial industrial design standards. You started that discussion back in January and February with Ben, and now Frank has picked it up, and he will go over and continue that discussion. He feels that there's just one discussion left, and then there'll be recommendations for ordinance changes. Jessica will make the second presentation, and it will wrap up everything that's gone on. So in this particular case, there'll kind of be an executive summary, everything that, and just a one-pager, and then there'll be the all the different pieces that they went through, because they discussed 5 different areas. I know some of you have been at the meetings, but now you'll see it in one place. Instead of just a portion, you'll see it a cohesive report. And at the end of the report, there'll be suggestions and recommendations that the Planning Commission made for ordinance changes. And then at that joint meeting, you'll be able to have an opportunity to talk about that. And then we can we'll finalize everything. And at that meeting, if you feel that comfortable calling for a public hearing, we will do that. So as Bob indicated, it's going to wrap that one up, and it will also wrap up commercial design standards. But we really felt having that joint City Council Planning Commission meeting would be important, and so those are the two topics for that meeting. As Bob indicated, they've been doing great work with Megan Rogers on the CI district. There will be no discussion at that joint meeting because they're not quite finished yet. So the next discussion for the moratorium will be on November 2nd. And so that would be the next Planning Commission meeting where they will continue to do their work. There's a little bit more that she wants to go over with them in order to make a recommendation and come back to the council. For your November 1st workshop, at that workshop, we have plans that you are going to discuss the Chapter 5, Chapter 16C, which was the public nuisance and abatement ordinance. So your workshop will consider the first hour at 5:30 is going to be your EDA. We'll talk about the 2023 goals. Anoka County Parks is going to come in, short presentation about regional parks, and then we will talk about that ordinance work. So I just wanted to kind of set the table of where all these ordinances are coming in, so we have the right discussions in the right place. And as far as moving forward, that's all we've only scheduled up through November 2nd so far with the ordinance work. So just brief overview for everyone in the audience of where we're at the current time.
So Tuesday, November 1st at 5:30, and then Wednesday at 6:30, correct?
Wednesday, November 1st at 6:30. But the joint meeting does start at 6, so October 19th, which is the next Planning Commission, and I think I have that meeting right.
Yes.
At 6 p.m.
That starts at 6 o'clock.
Got it?
And is there a joint meeting on the 2nd, or that?
On November 2nd, it's just a planning commission meeting. But your workshop meeting is 1 week early because the following week on Tuesday is election day. And we would not be able to hold a meeting that day.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Bob, anything else?
Nothing on this end.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks.
Our next issue is a domestic dog kennel extension request at 7538 Broadway Avenue, pages 1 through 15 of our packet. And I believe what this is requesting is that an IUP is up for a kennel, but the person who owns the dogs is having some medical difficulties and was asking if we can extend her IUP for another year. Am I correct, Elizabeth?
You are correct, Mr. Mayor.
And I don't see any reason why we couldn't. All her paperwork is in order. All her rabies vaccines, et cetera, are in order. And I think we should do it. I see no reason not to.
This is Rob. Elizabeth, was it, after talking last night, was it to extend or just not cite them if something came up? Because I seen you kind of smirk there. I believe that was a conversation last night.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, that is correct. It would be to suspend enforcement for a year because technically the IUP runs out. So without a new application, you can't extend the IUP. What you're doing is agreeing not to prosecute or enforce against an IUP that's expired.
All right. Any other questions?
So do you need a motion on that?
We do.
So then I would move to suspend enforcement of the IUP for the kennel license at 7538 Broadway Avenue for 1 year.
Is Shelley, I second it.
I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. On to number 10, Anoka County Rice Creek District of Vacancy. This was handed out at the meeting. Elizabeth, would you like to read it for us, please?
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, you received a letter from Anoka County indicating that there is a Rice Creek Watershed District appointment coming up at the end of the year because there's a vacancy. Currently, that seat is held by Pat Preiner, and I'm not sure whether she is seeking a reappointment or not. In looking at your role as city council members, you are allowed to send a nomination list of 3 nominees to Anoka County if you choose to. You can choose not to send a list of 3 nominees to represent the particular sector that has the vacancy. In your agenda packet on page A4, if you look at the map, there are 5 areas that the watershed covers, and in each area there's a representative. And in this case, the vacancy is in area 3. My question to the council is, if we are going to accept nomination, or if the county is going to receive nominations, the deadline is November 18th. We've done this similarly with Coon Creek and Rice Creek before, where we've sent out notices, or at least indicated to those in the area of Rice Creek that there is a vacancy, and staff is looking for direction on how you want to approach trying to get people interested in being part of Rice Creek, and whether or not there's the person that's currently in that spot, whether they want to seek a renomination.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I also want to make one clarification. Since the statute's been amended to kind of clarify what was intended by the list of 3, you can make 1 or more nominations. It doesn't have to be a list of 3. the county will consider a list of 3 or more from the cities that are within the jurisdiction. So what used to happen, there was some confusion over whether if you just nominated one individual, whether that counted, and now the words joint and several were added, so that means you can do 1 or more up to 3. So if you do just 1, it'll be added to whatever any other city's doing, and it has to get to 3 for the county to be bound to look at only that list. So a little bit of a clarification. Over the last couple of years, there was a challenge on what that process meant, and so they tried to clarify it. It's a pretty complicated process for just trying to get names forward, but so the bottom line is you can list 1 or more up to 3.
But it doesn't matter what we send to them. The county board are the people who select who the member is, correct?
That's correct. It's essentially a nomination. The only difference is if there isn't a list of 3, then the county can basically nominate or appoint anybody who comes forward. So I think the idea behind it is to get the input of the cities within the jurisdiction of the watershed district and to have at least 3 names forwarded from those cities. The clarification is you can now nominate 1 and it would go on a list. And if that list gets to 3, then it goes to the county.
So Elizabeth, I know we've done this in the past. I think my only question is, we've had it, when we've had time, we've had people respond back to the city and say, I'd like to be considered. And when we haven't had time, we've kind of said, go throw your name in the pool with Anoka County because there's an online application. So I think you can maybe clarify how much time you feel we have to do one or the other.
Yeah, November 18th is the deadline.
So we have time to send a letter out and ask them to submit their names to us for consideration.
Trying to think.
I mean, they always can opt to put in their name without going through us too. It's not like we're taking that option away. It's whether we offer that option that I'm inquiring about.
Yeah, you have two council meetings before the deadline. It's just a matter of, are we sending out a letter? Are we just emailing? Are we using our email list? You know what I mean? And mailing, the list that we currently have? Or are we creating a list of all? I don't know if we have all of the residents in Rice Creek only. I know we have a big list. I know we have a Coon Creek, or not a Coon Creek, a Sunrise list, but I don't know about a Rice Creek list that's just in Columbus. So it's just a matter of, what format you want to use. I know that Connor has the mail list that we currently have of people who were interested in vacancies. I don't know that, I don't know how many of them. Do you even know, do you have addresses on the email lists or just email addresses? Yeah, so we wouldn't necessarily know if they were in Rice Creek.
I think you can probably, I would not use that email list because you'd be asking people to figure that out for themselves. But I bet you could get a mailing list from, in fact, I know you can get a mailing list from Rice Creek for Columbus residents that are in their district. And then that way you could, you'd be targeting the right people who'd qualify to be nominated. You could probably get it from Anoka County too, because it's on all of our property tax statements, whether they're, what watershed district we're under. But I like that option the best because that, we've done this in the past, and I think it's a nice communication to residents that, you live in this district, there's this opportunity to serve. If you're interested, please let us know, or you can sign up online with the county.
Mr. Mayor and Council, one clarification. If they sign up with the county and they're not on that list of at least 3, the list of 3 referred from the cities is, it says the county shall consider that list. So if you want to be, let's say we find someone who wants to be nominated, they not only can go online, but they should then also request that the city nominate them. So that's the distinction and the clarification that's been made in the last several years.
Well, that'd be interesting to see if they made that clarification on the county website, because that isn't how it was set up in the past.
It's in the letter from the county, and it's in the notice of vacancy.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I think they because of the litigation that occurred over this subject, I think they wanted to make it crystal clear. You have to read it a couple times to really understand what they're saying, and they're saying, if there's a list of 3, that's what the county goes to.
Right.
If there isn't a list of 3, then they're free to not, pick anybody who puts their name in the hat.
But the list of 3 could be compiled from all of the submissions from the cities.
Correct.
Not that each city has to submit 3 names.
Exactly.
Which is,
Are we sure that there'd be 3 from all the cities?
We don't know. We would assume. So my advice is you not only encourage people to self-nominate, but you then ask, tell them that we would then include them on our list.
And if we only had, like, say, 2, one from us and one from Circle Pines, are they saying they won't consider it then?
Right, then it has to be a minimum of 3. It's a
So-
very odd statute.
So question for you, Bill, if they sign up with the county's website, you said it's a county link on the county website, will we be able to find out about that? Are they gonna contact Elizabeth to tell us that they signed up, or?
No, that's why I think I don't know the answer to that question. That's why I'm saying if we're going to send out a communication from the city, then we should encourage them to request the city nominate them.
Okay.
Because if we don't, then they don't get on the list of 3, and they maybe are not appointed.
And the other question would be for Elizabeth, could we, or are we able to, I know with like planning commission vacancies, are we able to post this on the display outside in front of the city hall to get the word out more?
Yeah.
the part that's hard about that is that they have to live in the Rice Creek watershed district. So, if somebody drives by and goes, hey, yeah, I'd like to do that, but they live in Coon Creek.
Sure.
Will they know that they aren't, they can't be considered? So that's the only part that's hard about doing that.
And perhaps, Ms. Mayor and Council, we could find out how the county, or how the watershed district provides that information. So is there a link, is there a phone call, is there a name that they can call to see whether they're in or out of the district?
Well, they can look on their property tax statement, it's on there.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's any other easy way for them to get that in. I mean, obviously, if they called Race Creek and said,
GIS.
am I in it, they would, but how do you put that on your dynamic sign?
I only have so many characters.
Yep, I know.
So what do we want to do? Send out a letter or a postcard?
Yeah, I know that we've done that in the past, and if there's enough time to get the list and get the mailing out, I think we should do that.
I would agree.
Same.
So I can make the motion. We ready for that? Move to send notice to Rice Creek watershed residents that live in Columbus. The notice, and I don't know about the email list, but a letter. If we can get the list of addresses in time to send the letter out.
This is Janet, I second.
Is there any other discussion or questions? So I just thought of something. Does it have to be somebody from the Zone 3? Or is it to everybody?
They look at that, but it doesn't have to be someone from Zone 3. They want to make sure there's reasonable representation.
Because that was a part of their lawsuit, was that
There wasn't,
from separate zones or something? But you're saying that doesn't matter, send it out.
yes, I think it doesn't matter for the purpose of nomination. Just put everybody in the hat that's interested and let them sort it out.
See what shakes out. All right, any other questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rabbi.
And Jesse, aye. Moving on to number 11, special assessment hearing projects, 2018-01, 2018-02, 2018-03, in our editions, pages A5 through 21.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm going to go backwards. We're going to go to page A20, so we're going to go to the last page, and then we're going to work ourselves forward. Because I think overall, this will give everyone a good summary of what's happening here. So in 2018, we had 3 projects, and they took, the project started in 2018, so we bonded in 2018, but the actual work didn't happen until 19 and 20, and some projects were over 2 years, other projects were over several years. And so now we're at a point where we are going to have an assessment hearing. So the council's, our previous council already held what they call an improvement hearing, and that's when you actually order the project and you have a feasibility study. Well, now we're at a point where we actually know the costs of the projects, and now we have to have what they call an assessment hearing. So looking at page A20, there's 3 projects. There's project 2018-1, project 2018-2, and project 2018-3. Looking at the very first project, 2018-01, that project was an extension of public utilities for sewer and water. And it serviced the triangle, or what we call the triangle, and it's the area between 35E and W as you travel down West Freeway Drive. There are 2 parcels, or 2 rather large parcels that take benefit in this project. One is Bituminous Roadways, and the other one is Green Value Nursery. While Green Value Nursery, their property is vacant in Columbus, their business is actually in Lino Lakes. So as you go down West Freeway Drive, there is about 12 acres of vacant land, and then you'll see the big nursery that's on the right-hand side. So looking at that, we have construction costs, engineering costs, cost of easements, and legal cost. So the total cost of that project, $1,169,285.90. Initially, the construction contract was $831,040. We had some overruns on the project, and we had easements, engineering, and legal. And we had a combination when you have overruns on the project, extra engineering and design, and there was a few other things that went into this particular project. So again, the final cost is $1,169,285.90. Looking at project 2018-2, 2018-2 and 2018-3 are in the northeast quad. So now I am talking about Hornsby Street North and the area that Caribou Coffee is in, and new apartment building, and coming soon, maybe Hy-Vee. So, and looking at big picture, the city also owns property in that. So I just want you to bear in mind that we will also, when an assessment hearing doesn't discriminate, everyone gets assessed. So in looking in this big project, the city will be included. So project 2018-2, that project was the grading and ponding. So that is one of the areas that we were able to do what we call regional stormwater ponding. And the benefit of doing a regional stormwater pond is that each individual property doesn't have to take care of their own stormwater. So you are able to use a lot of the upland to the maximum for development. And so we had a really good opportunity to do that. So this entire area will have 3 stormwater ponds, 2 of which are already built, and 1 will be built in the future. The last project, 2018-3, was the extensions of public utilities, so sewer and water pipes going up Hornsby Street. So that, again, is to serve all of those businesses with sewer and water. So that was the last project. So looking at project 2018-2, the total was $380,605.48. And project 2018-3 was $261,968.28. I wanted to give you an overview before I got into the individual paperwork, because it will make more sense when we go into the individual paperwork. So now I'm going to turn back to page A5. In order to assess, do special assessments, you have to follow a process, and that process is Chapter 429. So it's a legal process, and the League of Minnesota Cities has a really good book that you can read, and all the different things that you have to do. So it's one of those things where you follow this process. We go through a legal process. Especially on the front end, we have bond counsel and legal counsel review all the paperwork. And on the back end, we also have legal counsel review all our paperwork. So in this particular case on A5, we have a resolution for a hearing on the proposed assessment. This is called an assessment hearing. So in this case, as we talked at the workshop, we have October 27th as the hearing date, and we have it at 6:30 is the time. If you look in item number 2, it does say that I have to give notice at least 2 weeks, which is 14 days, whereas a lot of notices are only 10, but this one happens to be 14 days notice. So whether it's published notice or mailed notice, it needs 14 days. On the very next page is the public hearing notice. You are required to publish notice and mail notice. So, and mailed notice is to individual benefited property owners, and mailed notice is published in the legal newspaper. So, what is required for the hearing notice is that you identify the project and you identify the amount you're going to certify. That's in the legal paper. But mailed notice, you have to give the individual property owner the exact number that you are going to assess as proposed. So right now, what will be mailed will be a proposed amount. During the public hearing, when Bill and I make a presentation, they have the right to come before you and say, you know what, this is not right, or I don't think this is right, or the acreage is wrong. Just like any other public hearing, they come and they basically say to you whatever it is they want to put on the record. And that's your time to agree with them, change it, update it, and then at that meeting, there'll be another resolution that you will adopt the final assessment roll, and I will certify it to Anoka County. So we're at the beginning of the process right now. So A6 is the public notice that was and that will be in the newspaper. On page A7, this is a resolution declaring the cost to be assessed. So this is the resolution that actually goes to each property owner. And in this resolution, it says that we gives the amount that we are going to assess. It gives them the interest rate that we are going to assess it at, and it's also going to give the term. So in paragraph 2, it indicates that where this assessment roll is going to be for 15 years, and it's going to be at 4.75%. In Exhibit A, which is the next page, this is the assessment roll. So it's where you list each individual property, and then you list how it's going to be assessed and how much you're going to assess. So if you look at the subtotal area and you look at the very right side, you'll see 1,169,287.64. There are 3 properties, individual PIN numbers that are being assessed in this particular project. And the numbers for that individual PIN numbers are over to the right. So those 3 property owners will be mailed notice. It'll be the resolution and this assessment roll. We discussed during the workshop the format at which we were going to use as far as a formula goes. In this assessment roll, I've used the same formula we've used for the other public utilities. When we started the public utility district in 2004, there was a master plan. And the master plan was that we were going to assess what we call the trunk water system, the trunk sewer system, and then as we did line extensions, we were then going to assess a third time. So the improvements for public utilities we're going to do in phases. We always knew that they were going to be done in phases. When we started it, we said we had a formula, and I've kept to that formula. So I have not deviated from 2004 to today with that formula. So over to the side, on the right-hand side on the bottom, is that formula. And ERUs is an acronym for Equivalent Residential Units. And it was a formula that came up because when the feasibility study was done in 2000, Hackinson Anderson came up with a formula on how we were going to service the entire district. And in 2004, when we actually had our first project, Larry Borer took that and then developed this formula. So it stemmed from ERUs, which was a grinder pump system, which we ultimately didn't build, but we ultimately built a lift station system. A grinder pump system would have been terrible in the big picture. Not that it's a bad system, but in our case, I just don't think it would have worked, and neither did any of the engineers.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I can interject just maybe to clarify, the reason we would have a residential unit is because we still had homes in the freeway district, and the minimum was one residential unit for those homes, and then per acre. And then the equivalent for a commercial development was 5. But essentially, just to simplify, what you're doing is you're taking the net developable acres and you're dividing the cost by that.
And that's what the formula represents. We took the entire amount, divided it by the number of acres, and then divided it by those residential equivalent units, which is that multiplier times 5, and ultimately came up with the formula to distribute it amongst the acreage there. So going from gross area, you have the gross acreage. When we talked about gross, it's upland and wetland. So there's, unfortunately for us, there is wetland in the freeway district, and so there's not a whole lot of properties out there that doesn't have some. So what we did initially is we took the gross area, and then we subtracted out all the wetlands. We had the net benefit acres, and then we subtracted 10% for areas that just wasn't going to be able to be used. And that could be for lots of different reasons why you couldn't use 10%. That was the formula we used. So when you look at the first one, it's a gross area of 4.3 acres. In this particular case, there isn't any wetland on the property, minus 10%. You multiply that by 5, and then you come up with how many units of accessible units. In this case, it's 21. The ER units per ER unit is $5,628.34. When you multiply that by each of the 21 units, you get the $118,195.14. I've done that for each of them, and that's how I came up with the assessment roll. Again, if you look at the top, it does say proposed, because again, it's proposed, and property owners can come in on October 27th and come before you and indicate if there's some different numbers that they've had. In the past, if residents came in, they had a survey, they had a wetland delineation, if they could prove that these numbers were not right, we did correct it, and we did adjust it. So looking at the first project, there are 2 resolutions, and my recommendation is that you approve both of those resolutions. And so the first one is Resolution 2222. That's the resolution that is calling for the hearing on October 27th. And the second resolution is Resolution 2223, and that's a resolution declaring the cost for just the project for 2018-01, which is again the public utilities extension into what we call the triangle area, because it was in between the two freeways.
Has anyone any questions?
I just have a really quick question. So there's a little bit of a difference between the total dollar amount on page A9 and the one that's in the resolution. Is that just a rounding error because of how you're dividing out? So in the resolution, it's 1,169,285.90, and on the worksheet on page A9, it's 1,169,287.64. So it's off just by a little bit, but I'm just thinking maybe it's a rounding error, or do they have to be exactly the same?
They do have to be exactly the same, but it is rounding, and 87, 80. It looks like it's a dollar and a half. And there's no way around it when you dividing this much. So I will the number that's in the public hearing is the number that has to match the assessment roll. So I will apportion each one of them the rounding.
Okay.
This is Sue. I just have one quick question because I haven't been through this process before. Do the people and businesses that are in these assessments, were they aware of this since 2018? Or is this going to come as news to them when they get the letter?
No, when you, for a Chapter 429 process, you have to send out public hearings. So you have a feasibility study, you order a feasibility study, and then you have a public hearing before you order the project. So everyone is put on notice that you're ordering this project. And at the time, you have basically an estimate. You know what I mean? Because you haven't been out for bid or contract yet. So you have what they call an engineer's estimate, and that's how you hold the hearing. And in this case, it is higher than the engineer's estimate, but you are allowed to do that as long as you have an assessment hearing with the actual costs and you show where the costs have been incurred.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready for the motions? So I'll move to approve Resolution 2222 for the hearing on proposed assessments for the city project 2018-01 on October 27th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Is there a second?
This is Shelley, I'll second it.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rabbi.
And Jesse, aye. Our next motion will be to approve Resolution 2224 for the hearing on proposed assessments for City Project 2018-02 on October 27, 22 at 6:30 p.m. Is there a second?
This is Shelley, I'll second it.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rabbi.
And Jesse, aye. I'll move to approve Resolution 2226 for the hearing on
hang on.
proposed.
Wait a minute.
Did we miss one?
2223, declaring the cost.
You went 2 and 4, 22 and 24.
Yeah, okay, so in this case, it's okay that you did the public hearing, but that's for a different project. But we need to, I know they're out of order.
Yeah.
But in this, and if you want to go through the hearings, I was going to go through each one of them so you knew what you were declaring costs, but we can go back to declaring costs after we do all the public hearings if you'd like to do that.
I can do the 23 one right now.
Okay.
So I move to approve Resolution 22-23, declaring costs to be assessed and ordering preparation of proposed assessment for City Project 2018-01 in the amount of $1,169,287.64.
It's
But
Rob,
we need
I'll
to
second.
change that. We need to change that to match what's in the resolution.
Yep.
That was the question that I
Okay.
had.
So it should be one,
It'll be 1,169,285.90.
285.90. Do you want me to reread it?
That's not necessary.
You said 285.90?
Yes.
Thank you.
In the amount of $1,169,285.90.
I'll second that motion.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
Our next project is 2018-2, and it starts on page A10. And this project, again, this was for the grading and the stormwater ponding for the quad, I-35 quad area in the northeast area. And in this case, there were 3 projects in the northeast area. And so we had some grant money, and we were able to do the extension of Hornsby Street to the north, along with the traffic light and some improvements on Trunk Highway 97, with a fair amount of grant money from the state and LRIP dollars. There were a portion of those dollars that could not, and the grants would not cover, and that is the grants would not cover the public utility extensions, and it would not cover the portion of the ponding and grading that was not associated with the road. So anything that was associated with development had to be assessed back to the property owners or the benefiting property owners. So in this case, the LRIP dollars accommodated the road portion of the stormwater, but did not take into consideration, or it did not allow us to use those funds for, let's say, Caribou Coffee or the apartment building or any, Hy-Vee. So they all had to do or bear those costs. That's the costs that we're talking about now are those costs for the ponding. It's taking care of their stormwater in the regional ponding and grading of the area. So in this particular case, the cost is $380,605.48. I've given you the resolution calling for that hearing, the public notice that was or will be published in the newspaper, and then I'm gonna jump to page A14 because I want to make sure that everyone is clear on actually how these assessments are going to work. In the northeast quad, there's X amount of acres, and we knew that through the regional ponding system that we were going to have certain areas that were going to be dedicated for that. So looking at the entire area, we needed to take that acreage out because there's no benefit there for where you have the stormwater ponds, so you can't assess those. We also knew that we needed extra acreage for the road, and so in this particular case, initially there was somewhere around 18, 19 acres usable, but again, we have 2 areas of ponding and we have the road. So the total area that we can assess for these improvements came out to 16.44 acres. And you see the very first property owner is the city of Columbus. And this 7.71 acres is the property that is between the exit ramp going northbound and what we would call Hornsby Street North. We have one area that is left that we have to, that's vacant, that does not have a purchase agreement on it. Looking at these 7.7 acres, I just, again, wanted to make sure you understood that the $178,495.28 is going to be assessed to the city. And until that area is sold, we will be paying those assessments, understanding that we would get paid back when we sold the property. However, this is my legal question. If we don't sell the property for 3 years, Is the first 3 years on the city and the remaining however many years until we get to 15 on the property owner? Or can we assess the entire thing and reimburse the city for the first couple of years if we don't sell it?
It's all negotiable. So when
All
someone,
negotiable.
yep, so when someone comes forward, you can indicate that you paid for the utilities for 3 years and try and recoup that in the purchase price.
The remaining 3 lines, as you know, Hy-Vee owns 2.66 acres. C&J Investment, that is the same as, that's the holding company for Caribou Coffee. And the last one, we currently have a purchase agreement for the apartments, and currently it is under the city of Columbus, but we anticipate having a closing sometime this year. And so, again, we'll send out a notice to make sure that they're put on notice that there's a pending assessment for them. So looking at,
And that was negotiated with them in the purchase agreement. They're specifically obligated to pay that assessment if they close.
the formula here is the same formula that I talked about earlier in the Triangle District, with one exception. When we looked at the 4 corners of the interchange, the formula changed a little bit in that they felt the intensity of the public utilities was going to be, because it was retail-based, that they were going to, their demand on services was going to be at a higher rate. And so in that case, it was at a 7.5 ERU rate. So that is the only change in the formula for the 4 corner areas. Otherwise, the formula is exactly the same. Questions on the grading and ponding project? In that case, then, my recommendation is that we approve Resolution 2224 and Resolution 2225.
And I think we already did 24, didn't we?
Oh, that's right, you did 24, okay. 20, then it would be just doing Resolution 2225.
So this is Sue. I move to approve Resolution 22-25, declaring cost to be assessed and ordering preparation of proposed assessment for City Project 2018-02 in the amount of $380,605.48.
I'll second the motion. Any other questions?
Yeah, just, Rob, I
Discussion.
just have a quick question. So on this, with that apartment building, is that one of the parcels that's owned currently by us? Is that?
It is. It's the last parcel that ends in the PIN number as 0011.
Okay, thank you. That was all.
All right. Anyone else? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
The last project, I'm going to again jump to the last page of that, which is on A19. This is the project for the Northeast Public Utility Extensions. When we talk about extensions, we're talking about water and sewer pipes in the ground to serve each of the parcels. In this, again, it's the same property owners that are benefited in this area. And in this case, the total cost was $261,968.28. The formula, again, was the same as our first and second project, again with the ER units at a higher rate at 7.5 for this project.
Any questions, anyone? Then I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 2227, declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering the preparation of proposed assessment for city project 2018-03 in the amount of $261,968.28. Is there a second?
Rob, I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments? We'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
And
You
Mr.
need
Mayor,
the public hearing one, so I'll do that one. We skipped over that. So I would move to approve Resolution 2226 for hearing on proposed assessment for the city project 2018-03 on October 27th, 2022 at 6:30 PM.
I'll second the motion. Any other questions or discussion? We'll call.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
and that's the end of my assessment report.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Letter D, staff and consultants report, engineer report. Kevin, do you have a report for us tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I do have some items for you in regards to project updates. West Freeway Drive was scheduled to be awarded by Anoka County Board yesterday, and I was not made aware that that did not happen, so I can only assume that it did. And so this project is moving forward. We do have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for next Thursday, October 20th. And again, that award was made to Forest Lake Contracting. And they have indicated through some communications that we've had with them that they're ready to begin as soon as they can. More than likely, it would be November 1st when that construction would start. In regards to our butternut trees, we did receive confirmation through the DNR that the species was confirmed. So we do have to move forward with a mitigation permit for those, and so that process is now proceeding. In regards to Kettle River Heights, we've been informed by that contractor that they're scheduling to come back next Monday to correct some items and take care of punch list items on that project. Any questions on those before we move to some other items?
Nothing here. Anyone else?
Nope.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, first item then is we did receive a request for a reduction in the letter of credit, and this is on Thornbeck Preserve Second Edition. This essentially closes out that project, reduces the letter of credit to zero, and the balance on that letter of credit is $241,740. We did receive lien waivers for the project. Everything is fully established and the punch list has been completed. So I would recommend releasing the balance on that letter of credit.
Thank you. I'll make the motion to approve the Thornbeck Preserve 2 final letter of credit release in the amount of $241,740. Is there a second?
This is Shelley, I'll second it.
It's moved and seconded. Any other questions? We'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
The next action would be to accept those improvements in Thornbeck Preserve Second, and perhaps I'll defer to Bill and or Elizabeth the form of that motion that would be necessary for that.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just as a reminder, this is a requirement that comes out of the development agreement. The roads belong essentially to the developer until they're built and accepted. They can be used in the interim, but this is essentially saying that the roads have been inspected, they're adequate, and they're accepted by the city. So they become fully public at that point.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and council members, you do have a map at each of your places that Jim put together, identifying which public improvements that we are accepting.
So I will make the motion to accept Thornback Preserve 2 public improvements as listed on the map. Any questions or discussions? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
Moving on, the next item is a request from Buyback Incorporated for a reduction in the letter of credit for Thornback Preserve Third Edition. And that request is in the amount of $448,448. But based on a review of the detailed invoice, we can only recommend a reduction in the amount of $387,274.56. And there are some items there that we couldn't approve at this time because they're not completed. It's primarily in the paving items, and so I would recommend a reduction in the letter of credit of $387,274.56, leaving a balance of $173,285.44.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve Thornback Preserve 3 letter of credit reduction in the amount of $387,274.56, leaving the remainder letter of credit in the amount of $173,285.44. Is there a second?
Rob, I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Any other questions? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
I do have one more item, and maybe I need to get the opinion of Bill and or Elizabeth. We did receive another request for a letter of credit reduction, and that was on St. Clair Lakes, but it did not make it into the council packet. Is that something that can be taken action on?
No, not tonight. It should be on the agenda so the public has notice of it and they can see the documentation.
So we'll leave that one. We'll carry that one over to the next meeting. I have nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kevin. Number 13, Attorney's Report.
Nothing further?
Thank you. Number 14, Mayor and City Council Members Report. Shelley?
I have nothing.
Sue?
I have nothing.
Janet?
Uh-oh, I'm going to make up for you guys. I have three things. The first is we had our Sunrise River WMO JPA meeting on October 4th, and it went actually quite well, and it also took a long time. As you would expect, I think the big elephant in the room was the funding formula, and there was really good discussion about that, which resulted in a number of scenarios that were sent out to us to consider for our next discussion, which is going to be held via Zoom next week on the 19th. So my question to you is, I have a table that goes over the various different scenarios to be considered, and there are a number of them. And I don't know the best way to get your input since the time is so short. I can give you just a little summary of what they are and what we talked about. We discussed this really in concept only. There were no numbers, and so the direction back to Jamie was to provide dollar values for each of the scenarios. And what we did is we looked at, what is the current funding formula? What would the funding formula look like if we restricted it to just include private lands and public waters? And then we learned subsequently that there's a legal definition for public waters, which didn't quite match what we had in mind. So then he gave us another scenario, which included lakes and streams, which is a subset of the public waters. We also had a scenario which included private lands, public waters, and market valuations. And that's, we have market valuations in our current funding, our current formula. And then there was a variation on all of the above, where we split the expenses, all the expenses by the formula. So if you remember, which I can imagine you probably don't, I wouldn't, but the way that cities are assessed, their portion of the budget is to take what is considered operating costs and divide it equally amongst the 4 cities, and then the remaining costs are divided by this formula that I'm referring to. So we have a scenario that considers it with that current split, and another that considers it if you just take the whole amount and divide it all by the formula and forget about trying to take out the operating expenses. And the whole rationale for trying to take out the operating expenses and dividing it by 4 was because those were kind of considered fixed costs, and so made sense that everybody paid the same amount towards it because they weren't really dependent on the perceived benefit of whatever work the Sunrise did. So in doing all of that, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 8 different scenarios. I can tell you that our current dollar that we paid in the budget was $9,012.49. And if you look at the dollar value of all of the above that I talked about, it ranges from $7,847.34 to a high end of $10,597.18. So you're talking a couple of $1,000 either way, depending on how you want to slice and dice the budget. So my question to you is, I'm supposed to go back in a week or on the 19th and say, here's what Columbus likes. Here's the scenario that Columbus likes the best. It clearly isn't hugely material how we slice it in terms of what the dollar value is going to be to our budget a year from now. And I'm happy to send this out or have Elizabeth send this out, and you can weigh in as you wish. So I'm looking for direction from you on how you want to do this, because it's, I mean, we just got this on the 10th, so I just got this 2 days ago. There was really, and I only just looked at it myself today, so there really wasn't a way to get it to you before this meeting.
What do you suggest is the best for Columbus?
You know, what I advocated for in the meeting was that we come up with a funding formula that made sense. I personally didn't think including market valuation made sense. I was more in line with using the formula that included what I would consider public waters, which are lakes and streams, because that's what they do. That's what they impact, and private lands. I didn't have a strong opinion whether we split out fixed costs or not, and it doesn't really make that much difference when it all comes down to it. And like I said, if you look at the range of dollars here, you're currently at 9,000. The least we would end up spending if we selected one of these was 7,847, and the most we would spend if we selected one of these is 10,597. So about, what, $1,500 more than we currently pay, or about $1,500 less than we currently pay, and a bunch of different ones in between. So
this is Sue. Are you asking, do we have to vote on this? So does there have to be a consensus on which scenario?
It doesn't have to be anything. I mean, I guess my question is, do you want to just authorize me to act on your behalf? I can have Elizabeth send this out and you can respond by email. I certainly don't think it calls for a special meeting, but it's up to you how you want to do it.
Yeah, I guess I'd be willing to look at it and give my opinion. And I can do it pretty quickly tomorrow or.
I'll do the same.
Okay, so Elizabeth, can you send that out to, are you okay with that, Rob?
Yeah.
Okay. Shelley, are you okay with that?
I don't care.
Okay, so can you send that out?
Yeah, and I'm just looking, I'm looking for it. I see it was sent on the 6th.
It was, no, sent on the 10th. By Jamie. Okay, so then the second thing I was gonna make you aware of is that we had a meeting with Midco a week or so ago to talk about internet and to talk about their interest in partnering with us for deed grants. And they do have interest. They are looking at, or thought that we would be looking at the next funding opportunity likely being announced towards the end of this calendar year, with applications likely being due sometime in early 2023. So they went back to look at their construction schedule and their staffing to see of the areas in Columbus that are underserved or unserved, what they think they could get accomplished next year, in addition to all of the projects that were supposed to happen this year, but now got moved to early next year because of supply chain issues. So they came back with 2 areas identified for next year, and so we'll be working with them on those once deed releases the request for applications for the next round of grants that is being funded by the infrastructure dollars. They also told us that those 3 areas of the city that were identified and agreed to be connected this year, but they couldn't because of supply chains, are first on their construction schedule next year, and likely will be, work will start, I guess, weather dependent, in early April, mid-April. So we have that to look forward to, and that's makes me really happy. And then the last thing I wanted to just share is that the mayor and I have met with the seniors about their concerns that they've expressed about regaining use of the senior community center, and their desire to have a coordinator that could help organize events for them. So we met last week with a group of them that were at Perkins playing cards, and we met today with a large group, darn near 33 people that were having lunch at Running Aces. And so I got a list of suggestions from them, and also we kind of assessed their interest in coming back to the senior center like immediately on their scheduled Tuesday afternoon time slot, just to play cards and or games, have coffee, cookies, things like that. And there was anywhere, depending on when we asked the question and how we asked the question and how well they heard us, it was somewhere between 8 and 12 people that might be interested in doing that. So what they asked that we do, and I'm looking at Elizabeth now to say how best we do this, is they would actually like us to send a letter to each of the members of their group, and I have a contact list that we can get, basically asking for their input on what they would like a coordinator to do. And they understand that the coordinator position is something we would look for grant money to fund, or might be a volunteer person, or it might be a combination of the above. And it's probably because these things don't happen overnight. It could be a while from now before we would even be able to say whether we could do it or we couldn't. But in order to look for a coordinator, we would need to know like what we're asking for, right? So I know, Elizabeth, you've kind of done some work looking at those age-friendly city grants that the Met Council alerted us to, and that there might be some dollars and some availability to provide lunches for seniors and things like that. So anyway, long story short, they would like us to send a letter out because now they've had adequate time to think about it, and they've heard more about what we're really asking them to do, and they would like a letter so that they could respond back to that. And I'm happy to write the letter. It would just need to be sent out by the city. And to 33 or 40, however many is on their list, people.
I did have an opportunity to look at the grant funding, at least for the first round. It's more, the grant funding is more about, I would say, capital things. Like, how can you help the Asian community with, amenities? It's not really a grant for what I would say, staffing. Do you know what I mean? It's more activity based, which actually is pretty good. There was 3 or 4 projects I thought about right off the bat that is well on the list. I mean, it actually said that they would be able to do funding. So I think there's some opportunities. Staffing is always the hard one because even if you get grant funding the first year, what do you do the second year? Especially if you hire an employee, now you're obligated to pay.
Right. So the second thing is that I had an opportunity to talk to a person who was tied into the Forest Lake Parks Department, and he recommended that we talk to, he gave me a name, I can't think of it right off the top of my head, but basically Forest Lake has a coordinator, and he thought it was reasonable to even think about whether or not that could be a shared position. And so we have that avenue to pursue. And then lastly, at the lunch today, there was a young woman who has worked as a PCA for a number of seniors in Columbus and actually seemed very well known by almost everybody who was there. She has worked as a recreational coordinator at nursing homes and in hospice, and she said she would be interested in actually volunteering some time towards doing this coordination, so I have her contact information too, and I know, I mean, that also requires some work on behalf of the city, but I feel like we're kind of developing a list of possibilities that we can pursue, and maybe at the end of the day, one or more of them will pan out, or maybe they won't, but it's really, I'm not looking for action from any of you, I'm just giving you an update, and city staff and I can discuss the communication piece of trying to get a better sense of what it is that they're really looking for.
Just a quick comment. I was going to bring it up under my report, but I will bring it up now. The first round of grants for the program that Sue Vento outlined from Met Council, the deadline is October 21st.
Of course.
So I came up with 2 ideas, and obviously the 21st is not too far away. And so my first idea was the seniors are taking advantage of a lunch at Running Aces. And I thought perhaps, and there is a place in the grant scenario where you can do socializing get-togethers. You can sponsor what they call a social event. And so they have one event once a month. We could put a grant in so that they could perhaps have a second, you know what I mean, opportunity for lunch. And we would say that the funding would, up to 50 people, and such. What the funding grant does say, and this is, you partner with a business, and that's part of this grant, that you partner with a business and you create this social event for focusing on age-friendly, you know what I mean, scenario. And so we could build on that existing scenario if you felt that that was a good idea. That's something we could easily put together because we know what it costs. We know we have a willing partner, you know what I mean, for that. And if you thought that was something that we wanted to put together, that's something that we could put together probably relatively quickly. That was the first idea. Secondly, I've been approached a number of times on an extension of a sidewalk. And Running Aces put the sidewalk in many, many years ago, and the sidewalk stops. And we do have boulevard space to extend that sidewalk through the development at Priner Preserve. Apparently, there's a lot of those homeowners that like to walk, but the sidewalk doesn't go to Anson Street. They have to walk in the street to get to the sidewalk to get to walk. And so In this grant, there, it does say that they will sponsor projects for biking, encouraging walking and biking pathways. So there is an opportunity to fund the extension of that sidewalk. Again, that's something, relatively, you know what I mean, easy to put together because you're just talking about the cost of the sidewalk. We already own the boulevard. This is just really extending the sidewalk to Anson Street. So if we were going to look at something simple like that, we perhaps could put together that quickly. A larger project where you have to have a lot of research, it's just too short of a time frame in order to do that. But if those ideas were anything you thought you wanted to pursue, we could try to put something together. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to come back. You know what I mean, to all of you, because it has to be submitted next week.
Who would take care of the sidewalk, like shoveling it and that?
I'll turn that over to Jim.
I'll just do it.
Because you're currently doing the one that exists now, is that right? No, you don't. It doesn't get shoveled or cleared in the winter? Ah. Is there grant funding to pay to have it maintained? No, that's us.
So are you just clearing out around the fire hydrants then?
I will say, though, we're obligated to, so if someone asks us to, we would have to do it.
Okay.
Just like the park.
How would you do it, Bobcat?
Yes.
Well, we don't know that they actually would want us to, because I know a lot of seniors aren't wild about walking anywhere in the wintertime, but
Might be in
so,
Florida.
pardon?
They might be in Florida at that time here.
But, so I'm trying to understand the extension, Elizabeth. So it goes almost down to Anson Street now, doesn't it? It's just on the other side of the road?
It does not. It actually stops before the private road.
Okay.
So it literally, stops at, I'm trying to think of the name of the private road, and I'm
It
just
would
drawing a
need to be
blank.
roughly 1,400 feet.
Yeah, it's 1,400 feet short
Okay.
of you know what I mean, of the sidewalk. And I did talk to Anoka County at one time, asking, whether they had any dollars, and they generally said they don't have, they have so many projects that this would not be anything, you know what I mean, on their list. And again, long-term, we looked at when we financed the bridge, we said we wanted the walking path in the middle. We put sidewalks where we could, as far as funding would apply to. And so we do have sidewalks. They're just not all connected, you know what I mean, and in and around the freeway district. So again, there are lots of different scenarios in the grant. It's just a matter of, it's just unfortunate the first round, it's just such a short window. Because if the park master plan was done, they will pay for park amenities, and it would have been great to have another picnic pavilion, you know what I mean, to be put on the other side of the park, and there is a scenario for that, but the master plan's not done, so I can't submit the master plan showing the park pavilion, that's the kind of stuff you would submit, but in the future, that might be a good scenario too, but.
I'll also just share that the person who had volunteered to be a coordinator or to help with coordination also has written a number of grants to a number of different organizations for senior services, and so she also said she could give us a list of other places besides the age-friendly that might be possible sources of funding too.
I'm a little bit concerned about going back to when you said that there were quite a few people at the feed at the Running Aces, and then you said we might send letters out to the people that are on their list. I don't know, you say 80 some?
No, I think their list is pretty close to who shows up for these lunches.
Okay, so the deal is this, when I was working with them before, there were very few Columbus residents. So then where do we stand when we're going to send out letters to people, and we're sending them out to people in Forest Lake or Lino Lakes or?
Well, so, I mean, what I know about senior centers, which isn't a ton, but I've had some experience with them, just with family members, they all cater to surrounding communities. There's no, like, you need to show your driver's license to say that you're a resident. They pretty much open up their services to whoever comes to the
I guess what I'm saying is,
door.
I guess it depends on numbers. So, when I was doing it, and this is quite, a couple of years ago, it was 6 to 8 people from Columbus, and then the rest were from out of the area.
That's about the same now, Shelley, I think.
I think it's a little bit more than that, but there's definitely a mix from other communities. I mean, when we have the mailing list, we'll know. I mean, they have their club mailing list. I didn't get it today, but I can get it from Pam, so then we'll know for sure.
So how do you feel about the money situation as far as mailing out and using grant money for people that are not residents and that type of thing?
I think and I can't remember the exact name of the grant program. I think, you know what I mean, that's a state initiative. So I think it crosses communities. So I don't know that that's age specific. However, if we were looking at a coordinator and it was going to be direct costs to Columbus, I think you'd have to take into consideration, budgeting, because if we're looking at a commitment for wages, then that would be a budget question that we didn't budget for.
Yeah, so I think, I think the purpose of these grants is to try to provide a social outlet for seniors, a place for them to gather. And if the way they gather is they gather with some friends from Forest Lake, and they gather with some friends from Hugo, and they gather with some friends from Columbus, I just think that that doesn't become a concern, at least in terms of the use of the grant money. But I agree with what you're saying. If this ended up being something that, we had to consider funding through our tax dollars, which I got the impression from prior conversations that there was no appetite for that. So I was really focusing on grant money that would pay for whatever it is that we end up coming up with, and it might be something that starts out with a lunch once a month and might evolve into something more as we are more successful at obtaining funding. But I was not looking at this initiative as being anything that would end up being part of our levy. And that's how we have teed it up with the seniors that we've talked to too. So they understand that this is all contingent on being able to get support.
So Elizabeth, can you apply for these grants and then, I'm sure, if you choose not to use them, since we have a 10-day deadline or less? Just to
You
get
can
the
always turn down a grant, but you try not to do you try not to do that once you've, kind of made the commitment. Again, we can do a pass on this one. I was, just trying to think of something small, you know what I mean, that was something that we already know, like we already know what the costs are, that we don't have to do a lot of work towards. But again, this is up to the council. If you don't want us to pursue this first round, then we can wait till the second round. If you think that partnering with Running Aces and putting together, another lunch opportunity once a month, and you think that's worth putting a grant for, this is really up to you and letting me know from a staff perspective, what you would like us to do.
I think if you're able to do the grant for both of the projects, and it's not going to tax you in terms of, displacing other higher priority things, I'd say go for it, because what do we have to lose?
That's what I was going to say. If we have the staff capacity to fill it out,
To write the grants, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, can you do it without?
This one didn't really look, there's not a lot to this one.
Well,
Even better.
Yeah.
fill it out, I guess, I suggest.
Mr. Mayor, would you put that in the form of a motion, since it's
Sure.
a specific action to?
And also, because at the lunch today, they really, really enjoyed just having lunch. Everybody was dressed up, they all sat there, salad, turkey, and dressing and mashed potatoes, and they really, really, it was the height of their whole week, I'm sure, most of them. And some were playing cards off to the side, but for the majority of them, it's just to be out and about and doing something.
And I also noticed that some of them were getting, and I imagine they paid for extra meals to take home and store. Jeff was there too. Jeff Durain was there having lunch with them. So we got a chance to talk to him a little bit.
So I'll make the motion to direct the staff to apply for 2 grants. One regarding the extra luncheon each month at the Running Aces, and one to extend the sidewalk on Zurich Street.
And this is Janet, I'll second.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, aye.
Rabbi.
And Jesse, aye. And Elizabeth, how often do they have these grants? Is it every year or every 6 months or?
You know, it didn't say.
They're just starting up now again, so
yeah.
I don't think anybody knows how fast they're gonna roll these things out.
And I imagine it's how much interest, how much money they have, how many projects they get. So there's a lot of ground they're trying to cover. There's 6 different sections of these grants. I don't know how they're going to allocate the dollars, but it's close to $3 million they have in grants. It's a pretty big chunk of money.
Well, you can buy a lot of turkey dinners for $3 million. All right, Rob or Janet, anything more? Rob, anything?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So,
Did we do a vote on your motion?
Yep,
yeah.
Yes.
Gosh, sorry, just like, did we vote on that?
good time.
Yep.
So the mayor and myself attended the Joint Powers Fire Board on September 29th. Chief Newman had proposed a wage increase at that meeting before us of $12 over the next 3 years, being $4 increase per year. The body did vote unanimously to give them the first year, and then we'd vote on the following 2 years moving forward. Previous to that, they were only making $19 an hour, getting out of bed at, middle of the morning. Some of these firefighters were at my house when I had an issue at 3 in the morning. So I feel like they were being underpaid at that point. It might still not be what their time's worth, but they do it for a volunteer thing. So we did approve that. We did approve the first draw on engine replacement 1 for the cab and chassis to be built up in Wyoming at Rosenbauer. That draw was $342,131, and the remainder will be due on delivery of $500,034,280. That's going to be due in 2023. An update on people that were going to be applying. There was 8 applicants. They're in need of firefighters. 4 were offered to move further into the interview process. So they'll be moving forward with them. And I believe that's all I have to report, Mayor.
All right, let's move to Public Works, number 15.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. At the last council meeting, I was directed to do some research on the 182nd turnaround up by Coon Lake. I reached out to the Forest Lake Bus Garage and talked to a lady named Sandy Knight and talked about the criterias of how they determine bus stops and turnarounds and where they will and won't turn around. She sent me their bus stop procedures paperwork and the routing criteria information sheet, which I did email you guys. I don't know if you have it in a packet tonight or not, but looking at the criteria of a turnaround, they require on their sheet of a diameter turnaround of 115 feet, which we do not currently have the right-of-way to do a turnaround of that size down there. And then they had some other determinations on how many feet you could walk before you were too far away from a a bus stop. I believe the attorney did some legwork on that. If he wants to chime in, he can. Otherwise, I'll just keep rolling. So, I mean, currently at this point, the bus garage has determined that where the bus stop is currently at Vauxhall and 182nd is a usable bus stop. And currently, with the, like I said, the amount of right-of-way that we have at the end of 182nd, we've built the turnaround that we can build in that amount of easement. So at this point, I guess I'll open it up. You guys can ask any questions or
Mr. Mayor and council, I'll just add that, I consulted with Jim and looked at the guidance for where bus stops can be located, and it appears that the current distance meets the district's guidelines. So in other words, the current stop is within the number of feet to the bus stop.
So Jim, I want to make sure I'm understanding. There's no guarantee that the bus garage would stop in that turnaround one way or the other because the official stop is on Vauxhall. Is that correct?
that's what I gathered, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think the answer is they wouldn't because there's not a sufficient area to turn around. So it's directly in conflict with their guidance on how much area they need to turn around.
But I'm saying even if you've improved it, they may not move the stop there.
Oh,
because there is a stop that is official and it's within the time, the distance that is in their guidelines. So even if we improved it, there's no guarantee that they would create a second stop in that turnaround.
Particularly if those using it are within the distance prescribed by
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to make sure I understood, and it sounds like that's the case, so thank you.
If I may, this is Jennifer. Let's go. There was a bus stop at the end of 182nd for a number of years, so they would be willing to if the turnaround was sufficient.
This is the mayor. Please hold your comments until we're finished with our discussion. Thank you. So what are you asking for us tonight, Jim?
I'm not asking for anything. I am giving you the information that was asked of me. And I mean, at this point, I've done exactly what the council has directed me to do.
Correct?
We built the turnaround that was approved and the city staff was directed to build in the appropriate amount of right-of-way that we had, which was the 66-foot easement. Working with the proper slopes and drainages and things like that. Obviously the road surface is not 66 feet wide. But I reached out to the bus garage, which I believe was another request, and giving you the information that they have and the amount of room that we have to work in, I think I don't think we can do any more than that.
So we've used the amount of space that we have. We've used our right-of-way.
Correct.
You've built what you and the engineer have decided was appropriate.
Correct.
And unless we have a contribution of more right-of-way, we've done everything that we can do with the amount of space that we have.
Correct.
Am I getting it right?
You are getting it correct, Mr. Mayor.
Right? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think given the amount of time and effort that has gone into this discussion, it would be really helpful for staff to understand whether you want anything further done or whether this is the end of the road with this question. Because there's been just thousands of dollars of time spent in title work and title review, in consultant time. So, just for my part as your city attorney, I'd like to know whether you want us to do anything further on this question or whether you consider it addressed.
So this is Sue, and I did read through everything, Jim, that you had, and listening to the comments about we've done everything we can. Everything is at code, what it should be. We don't know if the bus garage would put a stop there. I mean, but that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to make sure that it's, the fire trucks can get in there, and they've confirmed that they can do that. We went through a long process, cost the city a lot of money, and we came to the decision of what we did, and we completed that. So I feel like we're done. I don't think there's any more discussion that needs to take place. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I'll agree with you, Sue. Anybody else?
I'm in agreement. We've kind of been in the trenches with everybody, and we've had a lot of discussion. You have to remember that with every problem that we have, we're using tax dollars, you know, to, whether it's paying the engineer and the staff and that sort of thing. And I think we've really come to a point where what we have is, you know, manageable. And I wish it was different, because I really, you know, like some of the people involved and everything. But at this point, I think we're kind of at the end of the road.
And I really feel like we did our due diligence. I mean, we looked at everything, and everybody had a chance to contribute, and it ended the way it did. So, I mean, I don't think revisiting it is gonna help.
Yeah, this is Rob. I guess I'd add too, I felt like we did do what we could with what we had. I mean, there was a easement that was vacated that, had we had it, we could have done a lot more. There's unwillingness to work with that easement now, so I feel like this is where we're at with it. So it's a reoccurring thing, but I think we need to lay it to rest at this point.
And I agree with what everybody is saying. I mean, unless that easement becomes available again, I don't think we have anything else we can do.
All right. So then, would you like a motion, Elizabeth?
Nothing
Or
really, there's
counselor.
no action.
There's no action to take. If there's, yeah, there's no motion required.
Thank you. Anything else, Jim?
Nope, that's it, thank you.
All right.
Can I offer a comment?
Nope. I believe not at this time. Thank you. Number 16, Public Communications Coordinator's Report.
No report from me tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Assistant City Administrator's Report.
Hello again, everybody.
Uh,
Tonight, I have a resolution for you regarding our city's first abatement project over on Iverson Street. So the fence was installed on August 30th, and per our city code, we sent a bill to the property owner, giving them 30 days to pay the full balance. And as of today, they have not paid that balance. So we are recommending moving forward with the assessment process, which would certify the unpaid amount and associated costs to property taxes for this property owner. In order to do so, the council does need to hold a public hearing, and we are required to give 30 days notice for that public hearing. So as you'll see in the resolution, we would hold the public hearing at the city council meeting on, I believe it's Monday, November 21st, because of the Thanksgiving holiday that week. And at that time, we would hear from anybody interested in speaking and the property owner if they attend. And depending on how that goes, we would there would be another resolution ordering the costs to be certified to taxes. Exhibit A attached to the resolution is the proposed abatement cost, and it includes the cost for the fence installation itself, and then the inspection fees from Minspect for inspecting the fence and ensuring that the fence itself was installed properly. And tomorrow, if this resolution is approved, notice will be sent to the property owner, informing them of this public hearing and giving them the opportunity to speak. Do you have any questions about this whole process, where we're at, where we're headed?
Anyone?
Nope.
Nope, I think we've been down this road with you a long time, Jessica.
Yeah, we
what's
have,
happening?
and it's in terms of what the city's goals were for this whole process, I think we're in a good place of accomplishing what we wanted to do. So,
Are you ready for a
yeah,
motion? I'll move to,
yes.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2228, setting a hearing to certify costs to abate public nuisance to the county auditor for collection with 2023 property taxes for 16658 West Iverson Street. Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
Is there any questions or discussion?
Did you say 22 or 23? I didn't hear it.
For the year, 23, I think you said.
Okay.
For collection
All right.
with 2023 property taxes, I think. I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
Great. That's all I had tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. City Administrator's report.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything further. Special assessments took so much time, I didn't have time to do fund transfers. Next time.
All right. Thank you for doing all the special assessments. So moving on to letter E, announcements and reminders. Joint City Council and Planning Commission meeting, October 19th, 2022 at 6. City Council meeting 10/26, October 26th, 6:30. City Council and EDA on the 1st of November. How can it be November already? At 5:30. Planning Commission on the 2nd of November at 6:30. And the calendar's on the back as usual. Would someone make the motion to adjourn?
This is Rob, motion to adjourn.
And a second?
I'll second it.
I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Our meeting is adjourned.